I'm wondering, when it comes to being on a campus like Stanford, for example, where so many people are probably coming onto campus already having that kind of knowledge or that experience, right? Like, what was your process for getting up to speed? Like, once it started to sink in, how did you then go about being like, okay, I want to understand what this all is?
Yeah, I didn't. I ran away from it. So first and foremost, to give background on Stanford, I think a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions about Stanford University as a school, especially as it relates to Blackness. So when I was in school, my class, so I'm 18, this is what, September, October 2007. I'm dating myself. I think there were 1,900, let's just say 2,000 other 18-year-olds in my class, the class of 2011. And at the time that I went to Stanford, the campus was 15% Black undergrad, which is...
That's actually pretty good.
That's my point.
BWI.
Right. That's my point. So a lot of people, when I say that, they're like, what? Because I think that people assume that me going to Stanford, it was me and like 2.5 other Black people, in a huddle. And I always tell people, obviously, it's not as Black from a population standpoint as an HBCU. No PWI is going to be as Black as an HBCU. But I really had a strong Black community as an 18 to 22-year-old at Stanford. And so for me, it was, number one, we're at Stanford. Regardless of color, we have to get these general ed requirements done. Stanford did at the time, I don't know if they still do, they probably do, had a general ed requirement for computer science. I'll never forget, it was CS 106. And it was basic HTML. So if you're not a computer science student, or I think it was science, technology, and society, which basically mixed computer science and philosophy and business together. If you weren't in this techie space, you had to get through CX 105 or 106 in order to get your diploma. And everybody knew that. And I think that is very Stanford specific because, as we all know, a lot of these tech industries were built off of the Stanford computer science minds, which is how one of the reasons I think Silicon Valley is literally located where it is. Because you have schools like Stanford and Berkeley and San Jose State and all these schools that really kind of help build that power force of like computers can do magical things, right? And I was the student where I didn't want to go into tech. I was scared of it. Remember, I didn't know what a startup was. I felt like everybody else knew what a startup was and I didn't. So I didn't want to tell people that I didn't know what a startup was, right? Do what the cool kids do. So what I did was that I said, you know what? I'm going to lean into the side that's very creative for me. And I would tell people I want to go into fashion PR, which I didn't say that. That wasn't a lie. I've always enjoyed fashion. I've always enjoyed creativity. I've always enjoyed how clothes can tell stories. So, because I used to do a lot of musical theater. So, and my favorite part of being on stage was the costume. I loved my costume, even the ugly costumes. I was like, this is so cool that you can literally transform my body through fabric. So I went to Stanford and everybody was like, I'm going to work at this startup and I'm going to work at Microsoft. And I was the kid who was just like, I'm going to get through CS 105, 106 because that's how I get my degree, but I'm going into fashion PR. I want to do PR marketing in some consumer-based companies. I want to make the Super Bowl commercial. I want to produce a fashion show. I want to work. I remember at one point I told a professor, I said, my dream job is to be the woman at OPI who gets to name the nail colors. Because I was like, she's clearly brilliant because those nail color names are fabulous, right? At one time I was really going down this path of what does it look like to be in the nail industry? Because I love getting my nails done. And I did internships in all of these things. And what had happened was I came back senior year. And of course, you always ask seniors whether they're in high school or college, the worst question ever, which you should never ask them, which is, so what's next, right? And I had just finished an internship with Ralph Lauren Couture in New York, and I hated it. I loved the clothes. I didn't like the treatment. This is 2010. So this is back in the day when interns were not paid. These are 14, 15-hour days. I felt very isolated. I was the only Black human body in the Ralph Lauren PR department at the time. I was the only person who wasn't a size -0 who worked in the department. Not just like, forget the models, like the people who work in the department.
I love the -0 comment.
That's what it was, right? I was the only person who had never been dated in fashion. All the other interns, it was like, my mom does XYZ for Tory Burch. I had one girl whose mom was the head buyer for Macy's. All of the people that were there had lived in New York before. Many of them were from New York, living in penthouse mansions in Tribeca. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. I went to New York once to sing at Carnegie Hall with my 6th grade choir, right? So it's just like, there's just a lot of layers here where I'm like, little Lexi B was like, this is a lot. Like, forget the work. There were so many just moments of like, this is a lot for me. And a lot of it, I couldn't fake it till I make it. And so I felt very unsupported, very unvalidated, and just very alone and isolated that summer. So I come back to Stanford and all my professors are like, so we're going to do fashion PR, right? And I was like, absolutely not. And they said, okay, well, what are we going to do? Because you graduate in like 6 months. I think that's a great question. So I started thinking about that, and it just so happened that this Black woman who's phenomenal and now a very phenomenal powerhouse in the tech industry, computer science major. I saw her in the quad one day, and this had to be like right before spring break. So y'all, we got like, and Stanford's on quarters. So spring break, and then we have 10 more weeks, and then we graduate. And I saw her right before spring break, and she said, Lexi, where are you going to work when you graduate? And she said, you're younger than me. And I just started crying because I was like, why would you ask me something so oppressive? I don't know. And my parents are going to come and see me graduate, and I'm going to be a failure because I have no idea what's going on right now. And I need to make something up in the next 5 days during spring break, right? And she said, well, I interned at this company called NetApp. I was a software engineer, and they are looking for a new college grad to come and be a program manager. And I said, well, I'm not a coder. And she said, oh, you don't need to be a coder. You just have to talk a lot. And I said, I can do that. And that's how I got my job at NetApp. And so she gave me the contact to her boss. During spring break, I went for my in-person interview, and I got selected to be a new college grad engineering program manager at NetApp. I faked it till I made it through the interview. I still don't know if the people who interviewed me really saw through my BS, but I was like, oh, we gonna make this work, right? I have no clue what a program manager does, but we gonna make this work. And I got the job, and then I started I started on July 5th of 2011. So about 3 weeks after I graduated. That's how I got into tech.